Hey everyone, welcome back to my latest build series on my channel. In this series I'll be working on the 1/32nd scale Avro Lancaster, originally set for release by Wingnut Wings but now released by Border Models. I'll be creating a video for each step of the build, sharing the highlights and challenges I face, and detailing my painting and weathering techniques throughout the process. Before I start the build, I wanted to highlight some essential reference books that I'll be using to aid my build. First up is the Wing Leader Photo Archive No. 5, Avro Lancaster Mark I and III Early Production Batches 1941 to 1943, written by Richard Alexander. This book is a must-have for anyone that's tackling this kit, as the kit corresponds to these production batches within the book. It provides a detailed breakdown of each batch, showcasing the specific features fitted to the aircraft. Secondly, there's the Wing Leader Photo Archive No. 15, Avro Lancaster Mark I and III Late Production Batches 1943 through to 1945, written by Mark Postlethwaite. If you're looking to convert your kit to a later Lancaster that doesn't have fuselage windows, this is the book for you. It covers the specifics of late production batches, aiding any modeler in the conversion process. Both books are jam-packed with information and period photos, making them an essential resource for your build. The third book is the Dambuster Lancaster, the definitive illustrated guide to the Avro Lancaster B.I Type 464 provisioning. This book is illustrated with high-quality CAD images, period images, and profile art, making a visual feast for readers. Some of the images will be handy with those with the B.I kit, but it's a must-have for those who are planning to get the Dambusters version. Unfortunately, this book is sold out, so you'll have to hunt down a copy. Lastly, there's Ton Up Lancs by Norman Franks. This book details the 35 Lancasters that each completed 100 missions. Each chapter explores the history of these aircraft, outlining the flown missions and the crews who flew them. Originally released in 2005 and then reprinted in 2009, I found my copy on the second-hand market. As the release date of this video, there are quite a few copies available on eBay for around about $10 US. This book is especially useful if you've chosen a scheme from one of these 35 aircraft. I'm sure most of you have already seen detailed images of this kit online, but let me tell you, this kit is absolutely jammed-packed with detail. Although Border Models missed a few minor details that Wingnut Wings originally intended to include, I'll be adding some of these as custom-made parts. So stay tuned in the series as we dive into this exciting build, sharing tips, techniques, insights along the way. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be releasing a video for each step of the build, starting with the pilot seat, platform and instrument panel. So let's get started. I began building this kit early last year by assembling the seat and the platform, but it was put aside as I was asked to build a Qatari Spitfire for the local hobby shop. From memory, these parts went together without any issues, though the seat framing seems to sit a bit high on the platform. However, from building the Wingnut Wings test shot for the Telford show in 2018, I knew that it fits into the locating holes once the glue is applied. The kit comes with two seat options, one moulded with the harness and one without. I opted with the moulded on version, figuring the detail would pop once painted. The control column parts B47 and 48 fit nicely together. There are some think marks on the lower end that don't seem to be intentional. I used a bit of Mr. Surfacer 500 to fill these spots. Part A10, the control wheel, is a perfect fit as it pushes straight into its locating hole. Parts B6 and B12, which are the column bump stops, seem to sit a little proud during the test fitting, but once glued and a little bit of light pressure applied, they settle nicely into the locating positions. Part A52, the portable oxygen bottle, will slide into its mounting tab with some careful guidance as it's a tight fit. Parts A23, the undercarriage lever, B7, the Bombay door control lever, and B40, the hydraulic hoses, assemble before attaching them to the platform floor. The instrument panel consists of 4 parts. Part B1, the rear column panel, required the excess material from the injection pins to be removed to ensure a proper fit. Part B49, the rudder controls, fitted perfectly into the 2 mounting tab slots on the rear of the panel. I've kept this part separate for painting for later on. The elevated trim control unit body parts A72 and A73 mated perfectly along with the trim wheel part B10, but be careful handling part A73 as the flat selection handle, which is the thin rod in front of the unit, can break easily. The small control tabs parts B2 and B3 have fine attachment points on the sprue. I bent the tabs up and down with my fingers to remove them from the sprue, a method I normally don't use to remove parts, but ensured that both parts wouldn't fly off. The upper tab, part B2, had a tight fit into the control unit, so I widened the location hole with a hobby knife for a better fit. Parts A42, the engine throttle levers, and part B14, the Type 10 compass, slotted into their positions effortlessly. The instrument panel slots into place on the pilot's platform nicely, but this is also kept separate for painting. The rest of the sub-assemblies were test fitted in their positions, showing everything should fit perfectly once painted. To start my painting process, I applied a coat of Mr. Surfacer Black 1000 to all the parts and let them dry. This allowed the primer to naturally level out. When I began painting the seat, I realised I'd forgotten to glue on the armrests. Part B17, the left-hand armrest, had a short shot and was missing the tubing section that slots into the back of the seat. I cut a piece to length using a spare plastic rod and superglued the armrest into position. Once the primer on the platform dried, I sprayed it with super metallic, super fine silver from the Mr. Colour range. This will serve as the basis for my chipping, as I'll be using a chipping medium to create wear in the high wear areas of my cockpit. Returning to the platform section, once the silver was dry, I sprayed the floor surface with a mist of AK Interactive Worn Effects. After waiting for it to be touch dry, I repeated this step, applying 2 thin mist coats to prepare for the chipping process. There is a lot of discussions on the internet regarding the interior colours. When is it black? When is it grey-green? I consulted with Richard Alexander about the appropriate shades. He forwarded me this image from Qatari Models' Facebook page. He suggested a very light interior shade, as the aircraft scheme I have in mind is from an early production batch. I lightened Tamiya FX71 Cockpit Green with a few drops of XF19 Sky Grey to achieve a shade I was happy with, and proceeded to paint all the necessary cockpit components with this custom mixed colour. I painted the instrument panel using Tamiya FX85 Rubber Black as the primary colour. To make the feathering switches and the boost cutouts lever stand out, I applied Vallejo Carmine Red to these details. Additionally, I mixed a drop of Vallejo Mahogany Brown with a Carmine Red on the wet palette to create a reddish brown shade, which I used around the engine RPM gauges. Vallejo black paint was thinned with water and then carefully applied to the blind flying panel to introduce contrast and enhance the overall visual appeal of the instrument panel. To make handling of the pilot seat easier during painting, I mounted it onto a wine bottle cork using blue tack. This setup allowed me to rotate the seat 360 degrees and handle it upside down while using a paintbrush. For the pilot seat's cushions, I began applying Vallejo Deep Green as the primary colour for the padding on the pilot seat. To create deeper tones in the stitching seams and corners of the padding, I opted for Vallejo Gunship Green. For achieving medium and lighter tones, I mixed Vallejo White with the base colour of deep green for different hues. Water was added to thin the colours on the wet palette to create a glazed paint mixture. Varying shades were then carefully applied to areas that would catch the light, starting with the medium dark shade and gradually moving towards the lightest hue. To ensure quick drying between each layer, I used a hairdryer after applying each coat of paint. I used the same process to paint the seat harness. Vallejo khaki served as the base hue. I added white to create the lighter shades and mixed in a touch of Vallejo tan earth for the darker shades. The seat fittings were painted with brass from the AK Interactive True Metal range. This was thinned down with odorless thinners. Unfortunately, somehow I managed to lose the footage of the process of chipping the platform floor. However, in the next video, I'll be repeating the process with the cockpit floor and will provide a step-by-step guide there. After painting all the details on the platform, I moved on to the weathering process. One of my go-to products for green cockpits is Ammo's Interior Wash. The dark grey-green hue works really well and makes the details stand out. Apply it straight from the bottle, brushing around all the surface detail. If the wash is too heavy in the area, I simply go back with the brush and pick up the excess and apply it into another area. The wash is also applied to large areas in order to break up the monotone of the cockpit colour. The pilot seat received the same interior wash as the platform, and it was even applied to the seatbelt harnesses. This removed all the glossiness from the parts and finished off the flat, worn look I was trying to achieve. To make it easier to handle while spraying the flat clear, the assembled part was mounted onto a wooden chopstick using blue tack. One of the weaknesses of the kit is the decals. The gauge dials for the instrument panel are grainy and pixelated, so I opted to use a set of the Airscale RAF World War II dials as a replacement. These dials are printed with a higher resolution, providing a much better finish. After applying the Airscale RPM gauge, I noticed it was slightly larger than the bezel, so I opted to use the dial decals from Border Model instead. Using a punch set, I matched the dial with the correct size punch hole and punched the dial decal out. This allowed me to apply them separately instead of one decal. Unfortunately, after I placed the decals in the water soap and removed them from the backing paper, all 4 dials completely shattered. I managed to source some spare decals from a fellow modeller here in New Zealand. A big shout out to Jamie Wagner for providing these decals. They've been applied and truly have saved the day. After applying all the gauge decals, the final step involves carefully applying a coat of white glue over their faces. Once the glue is dried thoroughly, it will create a sleek, glossy finish resembling the glass. And that's the first step of the Lancaster build now complete. For those who already have the Lancaster or planning to get one, I hope you found the breakdown of step 1 helpful. If you did, please consider giving me a like and let me know your thoughts or any questions you may have in the comments below. Stay tuned for more updates as we continue building this awesome kit.